Privateer Press have just announced a new edition of Warmachine, aka the Warhammer Killer. But there are some things about this announcement that are really weird on a lot of different levels. Seriously, this might be one of the strangest announcements I've ever witnessed in wargaming. And though a lot of people are really excited about this, I gotta say, from my perspective, there's some really weird things going on. There are elements of this announcement that have me going. But before we get into that, why are people so excited about Warmachine? Discourse, no one cares about miniature war games except for Warhammer. Well, picture the scene. It's 2010 and you, but a child to the miniature wargaming hobby, have heard of Warhammer and seek to indulge in such carnal lusts. But before you can enter the Warhammer store, you're accosted by a man in a long coat who beckons you into the nearby alleyway. And as you step into his lair, he says, "Forget about these space marines. I have a much better proposition for you." And before you can react, he throws open his coat to reveal his bulging object. Your eyes go wide. It's the first time you've ever seen anything like this. You know you can never go back. You have lost something, but gained so much more. Suddenly, you are aware of a deep and terrible desire awakening within you. A sensation that both terrifies and thrills. You reach out and grasp it, hungrily, and you take it into your hands. It is, of course, some Warmachine miniatures inside a box. Obviously. What did you think it was? Channels about miniatures. Because be in no doubt, many people have experienced something similar to this. Perhaps without all the heady symbolism and back alley encounters. But there was a time when Warmachine, the miniature wargame from Privateer Press, was so big that it rivaled Warhammer 40k and Games Workshop. There was a time in history when Games Workshop looked to almost be at the verge of collapse. Warhammer was and Warmachine was primed to take its place, all the way back in the 2010s. At that time, Games Workshop's niche hobby business model was failing. Prices were too high for the market. The games themselves were perceived as being pretty bad. There were balance concerns and poor leadership from Games Workshop. The core audience had been alienated and cracks were beginning to show in the core game design of Warhammer 40k. No points if you're seeing some similarities to today. And at the time, people dropped out of Warhammer as a result. I mean, duh. But Privateer Press with Warmachine were there to scoop up the remains. They captured all those alienated hobbyists. Warmachine was seen as an attractive alternative to Warhammer, and it was cut from a very similar cloth. It was big, it was bombastic, and it had a very over-the-top aesthetic. But compared to Warhammer 40k, it was designed to be competitive, a tournament game. And people flocked to it as a result. It was really big in America. And it was perceived to have a lot of depth when compared to Warhammer 40k. And though it was quite complicated, not exactly newbie friendly, it was generally agreed to be a pretty rewarding game to play. One that emphasized tactics on the table as opposed to simply winning the game in list building, which is a frequent criticism that Warhammer 40k gets. And so Warmachine was perceived to be the Warhammer Killer, and it almost was. There was a period in time there where you could have earnestly said that Warmachine was arguably bigger than Warhammer 40k. And Privateer Press were riding the high of this. They released their own miniature range, they had their own magazine. I mean, they were becoming the new Games Workshop. Privateer Press almost got the teeny tiny miniature crown. Almost. Because if you come at the king, you best not miss. And Privateer Press missed. There were a lot of reasons for this. Some of it was in Privateer Press's control, some of it not. For example, Games Workshop got a new CEO, and there was a general perception in the community that Games Workshop had gotten better, like that fella who was a newt. And there was a ton of other stuff that happened as well. It's too big to cover in this video. But suffice to say, we live in the now, and Warmachine's time has ended. Games Workshop are once again at the top of the pyramid, and Warhammer 40k has regained most of its audience. And it is undoubtedly the biggest miniature wargame around. There ain't no competition no more. And Warmachine has, well, faded into obscurity, really. Especially amongst casual wargamers and newer hobbyists, like those who just came into wargaming in the last few years. I don't hear people talk about it anymore. I don't see it on shelves, and well, when you type in the word Warmachine into Google, one of the first things you see is the question, is Warmachine discontinued? Not exactly a healthy game state. And Privateer Press themselves have seemed like they're on the verge of bankruptcy for years now, lurching from one Kickstarter to the next. But as it was before, so it shall be again. Games Workshop have returned to the dark arts and debased themselves with anti-consumer practices. And now, look to the west. Warmachine has returned. Privateer Press have announced the 4th edition of Warmachine. It's bigger, it's better, it's bolder, and it will destroy Games Workshop. Knocking aside Warhammer 40k, and Warmachine will once again re-establish itself as the miniature war game with balls. At least that's what the announcement of the new edition of Warmachine should read like, right? Maybe without the balls bit, but big and exciting, yeah? Well, to read the announcement that has come from Privateer Press, it's... no, not really. And it was Deck over on the channel Corner Case who really twigged this in my brain. So check out his video after this one, there's a link in the description below. But it almost feels like Privateer Press are embarrassed by their game. And their announcement of MK4 is very, to quote Deck here, sus. So, Privateer Press announced Warmachine MK4 in a blog post entitled, "Don't Panic." Which, I mean, if there was ever a guarantee to get anybody panicking, it's to tell them not to panic. And the blog post itself meanders a lot. It's not until like the second paragraph that we actually see the words Warmachine MK4. And then what follows can only be described as a series of excuses for producing a new edition of the game. Under the section Why Oh Why, which, why have you titled it that, Privateer Press? Why have you titled it that? Privateer Press write that new editions are controversial, but necessary. Living games have a shelf life, and positive perception of games require a constant stream of new releases. Okay. This is how you announce your new edition? Imagine if Games Workshop did this. Here's 10th edition, sorry. Like, what is going on here? This has got to be one of the lamest announcements I've ever read. There's no conviction here. They're like not selling me on this game at all. And Privateer Press have not done the most important thing. They have not expressed why I, as a consumer, should care about this new edition of Warmachine. Look, let me be real. I do not care about industry excuses for having to come out with a new edition of your game. As someone who is willing to buy into a new edition of Warmachine, the only thing I care about is knowing why your new edition is necessary and why it is the right thing to do for the game. I need you to explain how it is solving a problem that exists, or it's making the game more fun, or it's innovating in some way. In other words, there needs to be some sort of problem presented that only a new edition can fix. I don't care about the shelf life of your product. Explain to me why this new edition needs to be made, why it is necessary in terms that matter to me as the consumer. Tell me how this new edition will make the game more fun. Privateer Press right now are not making this new edition of Warmachine sound good. It's like their one job. It feels like somebody is twisting their arm and forcing them into making this new edition, and they resent that. And this is just the beginning of one of the weirdest launches that I have ever seen of a miniature war game. For example, in their announcement, they get in a few jabs at Games Workshop. They say, quote, "We knew we couldn't blow up the world, no matter how easy it would make things for us. We all know how that plays out in the short term because we all watched it happen with another game." And all I can say to this is not the way to announce a new edition of your game. Don't get me wrong, I am all for taking jabs at Games Workshop. I get it. God knows they've earned it, and I'm always a fan of companies like Mantic, giving them a gentle ribbing. But this is your chance to win me over to an entirely new system and setting. And none of that gets me excited about playing this game as someone who has never played Warmachine before. And I'm sure there are lots of people who have come into miniature wargaming in the last couple of years who would truly welcome a different, popular setting to play in that isn't Warhammer. And hearkening to the death of Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar and that whole mess it's just not relevant here. It's not the way to grab those players. I mean, who cares about that anymore? I mean, I do, obviously, but I'm literally a stick in the mud. I am the proverbial stick inside the mud. I make lore videos about obscure Warhammer Fantasy characters that nobody watches. I mean, most new wargamers only know about Warhammer Fantasy because of Total War Warhammer 3. Why throw this in here? It is such a weird, barbed statement. And it undercuts what should be an exciting announcement. An announcement that's almost as exciting as the new FlexiSpot standing desk E7. Remember, a bendy spine is the devil's roller coaster. And I don't know about you, but I genuinely spend at least 99% of my time either on a computer or hunched over a miniature, painting it very badly. This is why I was so excited when FlexiSpot reached out to me to showcase their new standing desk E7. This is a height adjustable desk, which means that it is the perfect size for anybody, even if you're very wee like I am. You can stand, you can sit, it can do it all. And that means that you're not stuck hobbying in the same position all day. The FlexiSpot standing desk helps improve your lifestyle and your health, while also looking very stylish with a finish of your choice. It's fully customizable. I got this version with the pegboard. It's perfect for holding all my paints and all my little hobby bits and bobs. So check out the link in the description below to get your own FlexiSpot standing desk E7. They have a summer sale on from the 1st of August to the 31st of August, so you're gonna wanna click that and check it out ASAP. And you can get FlexiSpot products with up to £100 off. So link in the description below. And a big thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. Now that's how you muster excitement, Privateer Press. Though I suppose I'm being a little uncharitable here. There is some exciting news. Sort of, it's not really exciting. It's more like when you're on a roller coaster and the safety harness feels loose and you're almost sure that it has malfunctioned, so you're pressing down hard to keep it locked into your chest. And if you don't press down hard enough, you're almost sure it will fly right open and you'll go spinning out of the roller coaster, breaking every single bone inside your body. That happened to me. That was terrifying. But it was very exciting in a 1996 crash sort of way. And that's the only way that I can describe my feelings around Privateer Press's announcement that all of their miniatures are going to be 3D printed. That's right, Privateer Press are selling exclusively 3D printed miniatures. Now, importantly, they're not selling the STL files for you to download and then print at home on your own 3D printer. Rather, they're going to be 3D printing the miniatures themselves and then shipping them out to you, like you would be buying from an Etsy store, for example. And that is... Look, I feel like 3D printing has a lot of room to disrupt the miniature wargaming market. I'm just not sure if this is the way to do that. I have no idea how this will work. I'm not sure whether Privateer Press can even 3D print at the scale required to support an entire miniature wargame. I don't even know what it looks like. Is it just like a big room somewhere with 3D printers just churning along 24/7? I just can't see how it's feasible at this scale. And it brings with it a ton of problems. Problems that are very specific to 3D printing. Problems that have already made themselves felt. For example, there were allegations just a few weeks back during Gen Con that the 3D printed Warmachine miniatures being sold by Privateer Press to customers at Gen Con were being sold uncured, i.e. that the resin had not fully hardened. This is super dangerous. Uncured resin is toxic. It's poisonous. You do not want uncured resin on you at all. It is a health hazard. Now, that said, that all turned out to have been a misunderstanding. It turns out that the resin had been cured, it's just the miniatures hadn't been cleaned properly by Privateer Press because they were in a rush to sell things at Gen Con. And as much as it is good that Privateer Press did not set out to poison their customers, this really highlights to me that there are some teething problems with just selling an entire miniature line with 3D printed models. This business model is not going to come without issues. There's going to be all sorts of quality control issues, things that are specific to this style of release that are going to need to be accounted for. Also, why didn't they clean their models properly? I feel like this isn't really quite a get off the hook sort of explanation. Those miniatures were sold at Gen Con during the release and announcement of an entire new system, when the spotlight is most on them, and when they should be doing their damnedest to sell us on the new edition of the game, when hype should be at its highest. And all of this on the back of a radically experimental production and distribution model. They should not be cutting corners on their miniatures right now of all times. They should be absolutely showing their best work possible. If Gordon Ramsay had walked in on them, he would have screamed, "It's raw! You're gonna kill somebody!" But selling 3D printed models at this scale has not been done before, and I'm very skeptical they can be done at this scale, to be honest. And on the topic of miniatures, they're being sold at an incredibly expensive price. If you had a thought that 3D printing them was gonna bring the price down, oh no. Privateer Press have decided to take the Games Workshop route to market. They are selling 20 miniatures for $200. That is not great. And from what I've heard, the quality of the miniatures is not stand out at all. Never mind exceptional. In fact, some people have told me that they're just not very good. Though, I must say, I have not seen them in person to judge myself. But so far, this is like a massive miss for me. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to be swayed otherwise, because some of this could be really exciting. There's some really good stuff going on here too. For example, they are selling all of the weapons available to their miniatures with the miniatures. Makes a nice breath of fresh air when compared to some other game systems. And the miniatures themselves have also been designed to have like little holes in their limbs. These are designed for magnets, the most exciting object in the world. This means that you can magnetize different weapons of the miniatures and exchange them easily. And you don't have to buy either multiple miniatures or drill little holes in the models themselves. You can use all the weapons and swap them out easily with these magnetized models. It's really cool. That's really neat. It's a nice little bit of innovation. And yeah, Privateer Press have also released their rules for free, which is fine. It's not exceptional, to be honest. Most companies in this space do that. It's only really Games Workshop who get away with hiding their rules behind a paywall. But the added benefit of the rules being free is that there are people who have played the game already. And reports are saying that it's good. Apparently it's pretty fun. That's great. Unfortunately though, there is something else we need to talk about. One incredibly spooky thing. Something that makes me incredibly nervous. And I'm actually surprised that this is the first time I'm seeing something like this. Honestly, I don't think the market is ready for it, or at the very least, I hope it's not. So Privateer Press have announced a subscription fee for cloud storage of army lists on their app. And they've set up a paid walled garden for lore, scenarios, and even organized play on the phone app. So yeah, this is a subscription-based game for anything beyond the core rules. And I hate it. For the record, I would rather buy a book once and just get access to everything, rather than slowly divvy out money every single month to a company. And then when the day comes that I can either no longer afford to pay the subscription or I just want to take a break from the game, I lose access to everything. What, I lose my army lists as well? Or even worse, I forget about my subscription fee. This is the secret goal of every single subscription service. They want you to forget that you have a subscription fee and pay them every single month. Subscription services are not good for the consumer. They take power from our hands and they give them to companies who then get to control how and when they divvy out content to us, how we engage with their content. And it works out worse for consumers in the long term. We always end up paying much more than we otherwise would have over the lifespan of the subscription service, compared to if we had simply just bought the thing outright in the first place. Plus, ethically, I kind of detest the idea that I don't get to own anything anymore. I don't want a license to use a book. I want the book. So personally, I really hope this doesn't take off. I mean, Games Workshop have been sniffing around this business model for years. Warhammer Plus is just their latest iteration of this. And it will come for us all eventually. This is going to be a thing in the miniature wargaming marketplace. And I just want to try and hold it off for as long as possible. So yeah, that's the game. And honestly, I don't think there's a chance in hell the Privateer Press can take on Games Workshop again. Because in a lot of ways, the reason why Warmachine was able to rival Warhammer 40k in the first place was partly because it had a big, beautiful color rulebook that was released. A physical product. And yeah, it had like some issues. For example, there was the infamous page 5, which told players to grow some balls. And that basically gave assholes a carte blanche to stomp on new players. But overall, it was a really competent product. And it contrasted well against, at the time, an incompetent and dying Games Workshop. This time though, I'm just getting alarm bells all over the place. I know lots of people really want to see Warmachine fulfill its promise as potential competition against Warhammer 40k. But I don't see that here. In fact, what I see here is the last gasp of a dying company. But that's not to say there aren't alternatives to Warhammer 40k. There are tons of them out there. And if you're curious about those, check out my video here. And a huge thank you to Sonic Bread and Beauregard Equipment and to all of my patrons. Thank you very much. I recently went full-time with the channel, so it's only thanks to you that I'm able to keep the lights on. And so if you do feel like this content provides you any value, please do consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/discoursminiatures. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!